Well, hello friends, I'm David Vose. Good to see everybody today. It's a great day here in Texas. The sun is out and I'm feeling pretty good. Well, I'm a little bit discombobulated by all that's been going on. All that's been going on since I was just a little boy. And I sit back and I think about the way I have handled all of the different things that have happened in my life, the various tragedies, and oh, has there been tragedies? There have been, I know this is not a big sob story, and I don't want you guys to say, oh, poor Dave, because I sit and think about my life and how awful it was. Literally, at times it makes me tear up. It really does, to think about the losses, various people that have died, and people, missing my daughter because she lives in California the last 3 years, and but those are small things. Huge, terrible, terrible things have happened. I've gone through various painful ordeals, physically and spiritually, searching for the truth, meditating on, just going off by myself, trying to understand this world, trying to figure things out, not understanding why certain individuals, why do human beings that we love, why do they treat us the way they do? So you question yourself, did I do something? Was it my fault? And if you really get deep into it and you start really being honest, you find that, well, I guess I did this and that and I shouldn't have done that. But then you ask yourself, well, but, is what I did normal? Is that something that normal people would have done? But what they did to me wasn't even normal. Maybe I was just reacting to something awful. I think everybody's reacting to some terrible things. So I understand when I tell you this, and I relate the fact that just briefly that I feel like my life has been horrible, that the 20th century is horrifying with the wars and the death and the famines and the pestilence and, just the whole ordeal of a young child trying to get to his school. Some kids, what they have to go through to get through school, being bullied in school or whatever. But I understand and realize that many of you are going through worse situations. I talk a lot about some of the young people that live in the inner cities and what they've had to deal with in their life, living literally in squalor. Some of our American citizens have never even gotten out of the slums. And basically, you could say they live in an apartment, but some of us might not even consider that an apartment that they live in. Some people have a room and, maybe a blanket and a cardboard box for a table. They don't have anything. Some people depend on food stamps and vouchers. And the reason that they're going through some of these things is because perhaps they were a single parent with 5 kids to raise. Their husband went to prison. And now they're in this very difficult situation where they're trying to raise these children. You got social services coming to try and take your kids away because they don't have enough to feed them. And they can't go out and go get a job because they've got to have somebody watch their kids. And so they're coming around checking on you, demanding that one of your kids is being unruly at school and he's got to be on drugs. The stress level gets so difficult that you end up being so emotionally disturbed you can't even work or even function. And then you end up in a serious situation where some of your children are being taken from you. I mean, this can be the most stressful kind of existence. You see, now I didn't have to go through that kind of ordeal, but I went through my own kind of ordeals. And I think every one of you out there, probably as you're hearing this, are probably thinking, well, I went through this and that, and everybody has their own sort of thing that they went through. So my point really is that when did human beings ever actually live in peace? According to our history books, 100 years ago, they were going through famine. They were crossing the deserts in wagons, and some of their family members dying of plague. Hardships where they had to go out and hunt or farm or some who were slaves, worked in the fields long hours, never even got their own home or their own family. Others who were free people, but members of their family dying of plague and having to work so hard, working their hands to the bone. Remember, there were times when in order to provide for your family, the man had to go to some particular project across the country and basically participate in some kind of slave wages, right? They would work for weeks on end doing some sort of project. And the man would go and devote several months of his life working night and day in some John Henry, railroad project or something, working his fingers to the bone, come back with maybe a few $100s to buy a little farm for his family. And then he had to work that farm, and it wasn't going well. He might have had to work night and day and put all the kids to work just to make $1. Because, you see, today we talk about minimum wage. You can hardly make it on minimum wage. But you see, at least we have a minimum wage. And even though it's very difficult, there is a way that you can live without starving to death. There were times in the past where human beings literally starved to death on a regular basis and died of plagues on a regular basis. If you were walking out through the desert 100 years ago and broke your leg in a field, you probably wouldn't make it. You couldn't get back to town, and if you did get back to town, they might not have even had a doctor in that town. So what I'm saying is that no matter where you go back to in history, if you went further back in the days when people were being bought and sold as slaves, and you found yourself as a slave, that certainly wouldn't be good. Or perhaps you found yourself as a woman. So basically all women were relegated to second class. You didn't really have your own opinions. You just did whatever your husband said. And of course, on top of that, if your husband was poor, he probably put you to work with the kids. So it was a very, very hard life. And then, of course, there was no love in your relationship because your husband may have had several other women that he used as sexual slaves as well as housemaids. And this was the type of environment that people lived in. Our world is basically more than disgusting. Our history is more than deplorable. And you've got to ask yourself why. Because wherever you're sitting right now, I want you to just look out the window. If you've got a window, and maybe you're in the middle of the city and this won't work, but if you can somehow just imagine a peaceful, serene place somewhere in Texas, or in Idaho, or Canada, or somewhere in Russia, or anywhere in the world where you can go and there's a nice, peaceful little lake, or a pond, or a river. And you look at that environment and you realize that was intended for human beings to live. The water is provided in the river and in the lakes to quench our thirst. You've got all kinds of things you can eat. If all you have to do in this world is find a way to eat, take care of your family, and you're not living under the umbrella of some empire, some kingdom, some manor, an estate where the owner buys and sells people and you're just his slave. And so if you could just get away from all of that, and you and your wife and perhaps your grandpa and your grandmother had lived in this area and nobody had come in there and harassed and humiliated you, and there hadn't been any wars in that area, and you could just live in peace, you probably over time would build a cabin, which you would leave to your children. They would build onto it during their life. They would have a village, a community. They would learn from their ancestors how to hunt and how to gather and how to raise sheep and cows and how to make wool and how to weave your clothes from textiles or whatever it is that you did. And if you could do that, and if you were allowed peace and freedom for just a very short little period of time, maybe one lifetime, you could perhaps achieve that peace and perhaps train your children and give them all of the benefits of what you had learned in your lifetime. And especially if that had gone for several lifetimes, you would have the benefit of what your great-great-grandpa had taught your great-grandpa, which taught your grandpa, which taught your father, who was teaching you. You would have all of this benefit. And I would think that life could be beautiful. I think that's what paradise is. Living in an environment where you have all the things that you need and the time and the security to accomplish those things without being pressured or forced or brainwashed or propagandized or tortured. If you go into an area where it's untouched by man, and I've been into areas like that in Idaho and Canada, and you find that there are animals running around and they're completely tame. They don't even have fear. So you have to ask yourself the question then, if this world, this natural environment that we live in, is not easy, why? Why all this suffering? This is an age-old question. And I've come to the conclusion that part of the question is not really correct, and this is why we're not coming to the correct answer. Because a lot of us assume that suffering is inevitable, that if you live in this world, you're going to suffer. After all, there's been suffering and pain for thousands of years, and there hasn't been a time that we know of that there has been peace and security. We don't know of a real paradise on earth. We've never seen a time in history where people were happy and lived long, healthy lives and had fun and had true security and peace and happiness. We don't know if that ever existed. And so we assume then that it's impossible, that somehow or another there's got to be a devil who hates everybody and he's trying to murder everybody, that somehow or another life itself, there is suffering. And we ask the question, why is there suffering? But I'd like to ask the question, why would there be suffering? Even in an atheistic point of view, if you didn't even believe in God or a devil, you just believe that the earth is here for whatever reason, and plants and ecology and all the things that's going on. And you would have to ask yourself, why would there have to be suffering? It seems like everything's provided. The sun comes up, makes the plants grow, and everything's there for us. Why would we be suffering? Why would there be war? It seems counterintuitive. Why would people want to go out and murder other people to get what they have, instead of just sharing what they have and living in peace? Now, see, a lot of us think that it's some sort of an inevitability, that people just have an inclination to do evil, that we're greedy, that we're selfish. And I really don't believe that. I really believe that people are basically not selfish, that we are good in our nature, and that if you left us alone, we would get along and perhaps end up living much longer and happier, and it would be great. But you see, we start off in this world with a book that tells us what we have to do. And we start off with indoctrination. Now, as long as I know, there's always been this thing called religion or indoctrination, and it's been going on for as long as I know history goes on. So therefore, we don't have a way to know what this world would be like if we were not indoctrinated from the time that we were born. In other words, someone wrote something down that is contrary to nature, that is killing us, that is causing all of this suffering, and established this particular thing we call religion or government, because in my opinion it's the same thing. It's indoctrination. The rules of government are simply lies. I don't believe that you need to make laws that other humans must govern other humans. That is exactly the same thing as religion. Today we've got some sort of category of religion and government, and I don't think there is a difference. Right? For thousands of years, they were the same thing. The Catholic Church was the government. Before that, it was the nation of Israel, or the nation of Babylon, or the nation of Assyria. And that nation didn't have a religion. They simply had moral and religious and civil law. And it was all part of their nation. As time went on, there were governments that would include another government's idea of what God was. And then eventually, when we got here to America and we said, well, we made a constitution that we're to be free. That constitution was designed not to create another government or another religion, but that constitution was made to say, look, for thousands of years, mankind has been told they have to have a government, that they have to be ruled over by others or believe in their religion. But our Constitution was different than anything that had ever come before, because it said you cannot make a law to infringe on my rights or my liberties or my freedom of speech. Therefore, what the Constitution was saying is we have inalienable rights from God, and we are not, and we should not be ruled over by others. They should not make laws to govern us, nor should they demand that we believe in their religion. It was all the same thing. So I I think this concept that man has is, where did suffering come from? Why are we all suffering? Every suffering and everything that you can think of that's bad in this universe, in this world, it can be traced back to law, to government, and to religion, and which I think is all the same thing. And in fact, I think the Bible actually teaches this. I think this is what Jesus was teaching against when he said, ye Pharisees and you scribes, you hypocrites. And when he overturned the money tables and when he said all these things, they put him to death on a cross, mainly because he didn't believe in any religion. He never said, bow down to me, I am God. He said, why do you call me good? Only one is good, and that is God. And why do you stone that woman? You don't have the right. You're not better than her. I can eat on the Sabbath, right? I don't have to take this day off because you said so. So you see, I don't believe that Jesus was trying to institute a new religion or a new government. I think he was talking about the kingdom of God, which is the lingo for the kingdom of nature, the natural governance of this universe. He was advocating his true God, the God that is above the spiritual existence, where we are no longer under law, but we are the heirs of all things. And so I actually believe in Jesus and what he said and what he taught. But I think it's been misconstrued, mistranslated, and misunderstood. And probably on purpose. They probably purposefully hidden the truth of what Jesus said from us, because the leaders have got to make you believe that you are under their rule by divine right of the king or the divine right of the government, or somebody's got to be in charge. They'll do it however they can. They've got to make you believe in them. And so you say, well, we've always suffered. There's always been suffering and pain in this world. Look at, in all of history, there's always been suffering, so therefore it's inevitable. Well, another thing that there's always been in history, as far as we know, is government. And I believe the two go hand in hand. Government, laws, religion, and suffering. And of course, that's probably what the Bible's trying to say in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, when it says that mankind once existed in a perfect paradise. But then the concept of good and evil brought us under this delusion, and the curse began, and we were thrown out into the world and forced to obey this angry and wrathful God, and our innocence was lost. And so, until we as human beings finally grasp that the only way we are going to ever be happy is to fully and truly grasp the words of Jesus in actuality, and truly and fully grasp that all peoples of this earth believe in, whether it's the Bible or their Bhagavad Gita or whatever book, Quran or anything else. All of those books are simply words on a page. They are not God. Even if a man could hear a word from God himself, you would still, if you heard that word of God through the man, you would still be hearing it through a channel. And you could not be certain that that man understood God correctly. You couldn't be certain that he wrote it down correctly. You couldn't be certain that you understood what he said correctly, or you interpreted it correctly. There are so many variables, especially when those words have come down to us for thousands of years, written into various different languages. And I believe that's why the Bible was written in symbols, because if it had not been written in symbols, it could not have come down to us today. I believe the Bible is pure and true because it is written in symbols, and you've got to crack the symbols. So I believe in all of the ancient writings. They were all trying to tell us that there was once a time when we were all innocent and we didn't need government, and we shouldn't have government, but we've got to get back to that time. And so I'm sitting here looking at the situation that we're in this world, and I'm wondering, how can I improve my life and how can I improve other people's lives? And I've come to the conclusion that the only way out of this is truth. That if I had the biggest bomb in all the world and I had the button right here and I could push that button right now and kill every living last one of the people out there that are harming and hurting others, that would not work. Because number one, if I push that button, first of all, probably most of mankind would be gone in a minute. And there'd only be a few ignorant little peasants running around who didn't even know who they were. If there would be anyone left. Perhaps there would be no one left if I push that button. And so it is impossible to weed out all the bad and keep only the good. There isn't anyone that's actually even responsible anymore. You know, it's like original sin. We don't know how all of this got started or how it's going to end. We know that the only way out of this is if people can become educated. I think that's what Jesus was trying to do. He kept saying, let your light shine. This is a symbol of the fact that we're living in darkness. The Bible keeps telling us this over and over again. We're living in darkness. The law of Moses was an old age that is passing away, and now the light has come, and we need to follow after the light. The light has come into the world, but the world has loved darkness rather than light. And here's the thing. We've got to finally recognize what that darkness is. Once we grasp that we're living in darkness, and that darkness is your own mind and in the ignorance, it's the way you think. That's what's destroying you. You think you've got to go and work and have all these nice things. That's destroying you. You don't need any of these nice things. You don't need a government. All you need is to live and breathe. You think that, that's immoral and you've got to stamp immorality out. So therefore, you're the judge and jury. And people that do those things, they've got to be punished. And somehow we need a government to correct all this and put these bad people in prison. As long as we believe that, we judge others, we shall be judged accordingly. And so, until mankind can come to this truth, then we will continue to suffer. I don't know how much more suffering we're going to go through. But until the light completely dawns on this world, there's going to be a great battle between good and light. And I think that the day is coming very, very soon when we're going to overcome all of this and government's going to be no more. But until that day happens, there's going to be a lot of suffering. And the evil rodents that are running the world right now, they're going to be doing everything they can to try and hang on to their control. So when they see people like us telling the truth, they're not going to like it. They're going to make fun of us. They're going to laugh at us. They're going to persecute us. And some of us, as Jesus said, will be put to death. And this has happened for a long, long time. And it's going to continue to happen until enough of us finally get it, and then we have the courage to stand up and promulgate this great truth. Not half a truth, but the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. And that is that we understand that no law shall be tolerated on this earth. No judgments, no condemnation, because we're all in the same boat, and we're all equal, and sin is a figment of our imagination, that it is an illusion, and it is the illusion that we're creating. This government is the illusion itself. It creates a false sense of what is real. And we're not living in the real world, and we're judging and lording it over others. And some individuals are the slaves to others, and some have too many things, and they're living in luxury, and they're not happy either, because they're drunken and they're dying, and their wives are leaving them because they don't know how to love. And their children are disobedient because they don't know how to love their children. So they're not happy either. Nobody's happy in this situation. And those who are greedy, they will promote wickedness and try to bind you with their evil sorcery to get their gain and to rule over you and to enslave you. And they will continue to do so until the light dawns in this world and the light expels the darkness. You see, if we take a gun and we go and shoot those people, then all that occurs is that others say, you know what, I'm going to get a gun and shoot you. And then they shoot them and he shoots these guys. And it never ends until we finally realize what the truth is. Nobody needs to die. Nobody's guilty. We need to just stop now. Now here's the problem. We have such an intricate government. It is basically in our lives in such a way that it controls every aspect of everything, even the way we think. And it's getting to the point where it's going to be controlling every breath you take because of the new technology. And if we don't learn the truth pretty soon, we're going to have a nervous breakdown. It's happening now, but we're going to be so sick emotionally and mentally that the world's going to go up in a puff of smoke real soon. Now, that may be the only way to save us. But I hope that enough of us can see the light and others will know that the light is good and that somehow or another, before that horrible fate awaits us, that great trouble and doom, that somehow we will be able to repent of this and turn around and the world can be saved. You see, right now, our government, they've gotten us to sit in our little sofas in front of the television every day. We watch the news. And we sit and debate the most ridiculous things. Let's debate whether or not two men can sleep in the same bed. Because if we live in nature according to our own instinctual behavior, we're not going to cause problems. The only reason you're doing something crazy over there is because you're sitting in front of a television and they're telling you that unless you do this certain little move or wear your pants down around your knees or put a big tattoo across your forehead saying, "I'm Satan," that you're not cool. And so that's the problem. All the propaganda and the lies. Propaganda is religion, friends. They didn't have televisions, but they had priests. And priests would come and they would build a little building down at the end of the corner and demand that everybody go to get their propagation at the building. Well, now they've found a way to funnel that propaganda right into your home. It's called a television or a radio. And now we've got things we call phones. And the propaganda is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's causing mental illness and insanity. And we've got to do something. We've got to get people to understand. Now, here's the deal. If we were to just end all government tomorrow, I would say about 6 billion people would die immediately or within several weeks. It would be a huge holocaust because there are billions of people that rely upon all of the trucks and the oil that's being sucked out of the earth and the satellites and everything that's going on is a big system, like a big ant farm, and we're all just going back and forth living off of this system. You can't just pull the plug because everybody would just die. So I think it's got to be done either gradually or all at once. If it happens all at once, it will be in a nuclear holocaust and we're all going to be gone. And none of us will even know when that day happens because it'll be over very fast. The only other way is that we understand through our own mind that we've been wrong and we admit it and we start making progress towards eliminating all of the problems one by one. Like, for instance, in our government, we need to get rid of the CIA and the FBI and the NSA and the secret courts. We need to get rid of lawyers and all of the laws. It's none of your business whether or not that person does drugs. Leave them alone. It's none of your business. We don't need police searching your car to see if you have drugs or your home. We don't need bureaucrats. We don't need legislators. We need to stop all of that. But I know it have to be done one thing at a time. I think the number one thing is we get rid of the IRS, we get rid of the taxes, and a lot of these things will dry up. And then we start going one step at a time, one step at a time. I don't believe we should do it all at once. I think it'll happen naturally if we just do it one step at a time. So I, then, today, am announcing that I am running for president. And the only reason I'm running for president, friends, is not because I think I'm better than anybody, but exactly the opposite. Because I finally figured out that I am not better than anyone else. And that I am not special. But I have a gift that I've been given from God. It is clarity of mind. And I know that all government is the fault. You need someone who knows the truth. And who works tirelessly every day on his pulpit preaching that truth. See, this is what we need for a president. What we need is somebody who knows the truth and can disseminate the truth to all the people, because only the light is going to save us from the darkness. Now, you don't have to elect me, and I don't need to be in the White House, because you see, that light can shine from any phone device you have. All those who wish to vote for me, I ask you simply to do this. Vote for me by watching the videos and then telling others the message. And the message is the light. And the light is what's going to save them. And that salvation is simply freedom. Follow the Constitution of America. We believe in the one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. We believe that all men are created equal. And we believe that about 90% of everything that we're doing in this country is illegal and against the Constitution of America. And so, in order to vote for me, all you have to do is help me get this message out. Because you see, we don't really need a government, so we don't really need a president. See, the president is not something that the Constitution of America demands. What I'm trying to do is bring down the legislature, which night and day trying to qualify everything about our life and imprison us and enslave us with their laws. We don't need our laws and our legislators. We don't need a president because we don't have and don't need a corporation. But we are the people, and our government shall be the government of God. And it shall be a government for the people and by the people. It shall be the government of nature. And this is what our Constitution is. It is a government which says we have inalienable rights that are given to us by God. And nobody can make a law to infringe upon our rights. And so then, friends, I am running to be the president, not of this corporation called the United States. And I am running to be the president of the actual government of the Constitution of America, which is actually just a representative for you, the people. Because you see, the government that I'm talking about is for the people and by the people. The first thing that I will do is get rid of the IRS and the taxation of America. When we dry that up, we will then be drying up the real swamp. Because you see, without money, the bankers cannot do their little scheme. It doesn't work. Those are the people that are thwarting the truth. The media and the bankers and all of this, the taxation. The taxation brings in money to the government so that we can have this huge military that keeps us all in bondage, that keeps the police on the street harassing us, that keeps all of this school system going to propagandize us. Okay, once we can get rid of the banks, we can drain the swamp. So anyway, I will talk to you guys more at other times about what we need to do. But this is basically the whole thing in a nutshell. We need to come to an accurate knowledge of truth. And we need to understand that truth. And we need to teach it to everyone else. And stand up for the truth. Because it is the truth that will set us free. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go, friends. I'm David Vose, and we'll see you again tomorrow.